Right now, at this exact moment, Russian cargo aircraft are landing at Tehran's Mehrabad airbase carrying what Moscow describes as defensive radar equipment, but what Western intelligence agencies are calling advanced S-600 air defense system components, technology so sophisticated it doesn't officially exist yet, even in Russia's own arsenal. The Pentagon claims these deliveries represent a red line violation that threatens American air power dominance across the Middle East. Iran's defense ministry posted on social media, "We have received critical defensive systems ensuring our airspace sovereignty." Two contradictory narratives, one from a regime fighting for survival after losing its supreme leader, one from the United States military, whose stealth aircraft have operated with impunity over the region for 3 decades. One of them is fundamentally misrepresenting what just crossed into Iranian territory. This is not routine arms transfer diplomacy. This is Russia providing Iran with weapons technology that could fundamentally alter the strategic balance in the Middle East, technology that threatens to neutralize the single greatest American military advantage in the region, air supremacy. Let me walk you through exactly what happened. On Tuesday, March 25, 2026, at approximately 0340 hours local time, commercial satellite imagery from Maxar Technologies captured 4 Russian Ilyushin Il-76 strategic airlifters on final approach to Mehrabad Air Base in western Tehran. The Il-76 is not a passenger aircraft. This is Russia's primary heavy-lift military transport capable of carrying up to 50 tons of cargo, including armored vehicles, missile systems, and advanced electronic warfare equipment. At 0615 hours, open-source intelligence analysts monitoring flight tracking applications noted that all 4 aircraft had their transponders disabled during the final descent phase, a standard procedure when transporting sensitive military equipment that nations don't want advertised to satellite reconnaissance. By 0730 hours, Iranian state media outlet Tasnim News Agency, which is closely affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, published a statement from Iran's defense ministry confirming receipt of what they termed advanced air defense radar systems and associated command infrastructure purchased under existing defense cooperation agreements with the Russian Federation. The statement emphasized these were purely defensive systems intended to protect Iranian airspace from violation. At 1145 hours, the Pentagon issued a terse response through U.S. Central Command's official social media account. "We are aware of reports regarding Russian military equipment deliveries to Iran. These transfers, if confirmed to include advanced surface-to-air missile systems, would represent serious escalation threatening regional stability and American force protection." By 1430 hours Eastern Time, Reuters reported citing 3 unnamed Western intelligence officials that the cargo included critical components for the S-600 Triumphator M air defense system, a weapon so advanced that Russia has not yet deployed it operationally even for its own forces. At 1820 hours local time in Brussels, NATO Secretary General called an emergency session of the North Atlantic Council to discuss the implications of advanced Russian air defense technology reaching Iranian hands. As of this recording, that emergency session is ongoing behind closed doors at NATO headquarters. To understand why 4 cargo planes landing in Tehran triggered emergency NATO meetings, you need to understand what the S-600 system represents. Russia's S-series surface-to-air missile systems have evolved through multiple generations, each representing quantum leaps in capability. The S-300, which Iran acquired in 2016 after years of Russian delays, can engage targets at ranges up to 200 kilometers and altitudes up to 27 kilometers. This system gave Iran credible defense against conventional 4th-generation aircraft like F-15s and F-16s, but remained vulnerable to American 5th-generation stealth aircraft and modern electronic warfare. The S-400, currently deployed by Russia and exported to Turkey, China, and India, extended engagement ranges to 400 kilometers with improved ability to detect low observable stealth aircraft through advanced radar processing. The S-400 represented the first system that could theoretically detect and engage F-35 stealth fighters under certain conditions, though American pilots could still operate with relative confidence using proper tactics and electronic countermeasures. The S-600 Triumphator M represents an entirely different threat category. According to Russian state defense publications and analysis from Jane's Defense Weekly, the S-600 employs multispectral sensor fusion combining traditional radar with infrared search and track systems making stealth coatings and shaping far less effective. The system can engage targets at ranges up to 600 kilometers. That's the distance from Tehran to Baghdad, and altitudes up to 200 kilometers, extending into near space where hypersonic weapons and ballistic missiles operate. The missile interceptors themselves employ hit-to-kill technology combined with proximity-fused fragmentation warheads, providing dual-mode engagement capability against both aircraft and incoming missiles. Most critically, the S-600 integrates with over-the-horizon radar networks and satellite data links, allowing engagement of targets before they even enter line-of-sight range. Dr. Pavel Felgenhauer, defense analyst with the Jamestown Foundation, explained in a 2025 assessment that the S-600 is designed specifically to counter American stealth penetration tactics that rendered previous systems obsolete. If deployed competently with proper integration into a layered air defense network, this system fundamentally changes airspace denial calculations. The strategic significance is simple. American air power has dominated Middle Eastern conflicts since Desert Storm in 1991 because U.S. aircraft could operate with near impunity, striking targets at will while enemy air defenses proved ineffective. The F-35, B-2, and B-21 stealth aircraft represent hundreds of billions of dollars in investment predicated on the assumption that adversaries cannot reliably detect and engage them. If Iran acquires functional S-600 batteries and integrates them effectively, that assumption evaporates. Suddenly, American strike packages targeting Iranian nuclear facilities or missile bases face genuine attrition risk. The calculated acceptance of minimal American casualties in Middle Eastern military operations, a political requirement since Vietnam, becomes impossible to guarantee. Here's the strategic context that makes this transfer so significant right now. Russia needs Iran's cooperation on multiple fronts. Moscow requires Iranian cooperation in Syria, where both nations support the Assad regime. Russia needs Iranian restraint regarding energy production to maintain elevated global oil prices, supporting Russia's sanctions-battered economy. Most critically, Russia seeks to constrain American military freedom of action in the Middle East as part of broader strategic competition. From Moscow's perspective, providing advanced air defense systems to Iran accomplishes multiple objectives simultaneously. It demonstrates to potential Russian arms customers that Moscow will supply cutting-edge technology even under Western pressure. It complicates American military planning, forcing the Pentagon to dedicate additional resources to Middle Eastern contingencies that could otherwise deploy to European or Indo-Pacific theaters. It provides Russia with potential operational intelligence on American stealth aircraft capabilities if Iran ever engages F-35s or B-2s with S-600 systems, allowing Russian engineers to refine their own defensive networks. According to Dr. Jeffrey Edmonds, former CIA military analyst now with the Center for Naval Analyses, Russia is leveraging arms transfers as strategic tools rather than mere commercial transactions. The S-600 to Iran serves Russian geopolitical interests far beyond the monetary value of the sale. From Iran's perspective, this capability represents existential insurance. Tehran has operated under credible threat of American or Israeli military strikes against its nuclear program since at least 2012. Previous air defense systems provided marginal deterrent value because Israeli F-35I stealth fighters could likely penetrate them successfully. The S-600 changes that calculation. If Iranian air defenses can credibly threaten American stealth aircraft, the political cost of military strikes increases dramatically. Israeli Prime Minister could face domestic political crisis if F-35s are lost over Iran. American presidents must weigh casualties against objectives when stealth penetration no longer guarantees near-zero losses. This creates deterrence through denial, making successful attacks so difficult and costly that adversaries choose alternative approaches. From the American perspective, this represents a strategic nightmare. According to General Kenneth McKenzie, former CENTCOM commander now retired, speaking at the Atlantic Council last month, advanced air defense systems in Iranian hands fundamentally complicate our ability to hold at risk the targets that matter most. Deeply buried nuclear facilities, ballistic missile production centers, command bunkers. We can still penetrate sophisticated air defenses, but not without accepting risk levels that may prove politically unsustainable. The United States must now either accept degraded ability to strike Iranian targets, invest billions in additional electronic warfare and air defense suppression capabilities, or consider preemptive strikes on the S-600 systems themselves before they become operational. There are three scenarios for how this situation develops. Scenario 1 is diplomatic containment through sanctions escalation. Probability 30%. In this pathway, the United States imposes severe secondary sanctions on Russian defense entities involved in the transfer and threatens similar sanctions on Iranian end users. NATO allies coordinate diplomatic pressure on Moscow to halt further deliveries. The S-600 components already in Iran remain but never become fully operational because Russia withholds critical software, technical support, or additional hardware components. Iran lacks indigenous expertise to integrate the system effectively without sustained Russian assistance. Moscow, facing coordinated Western economic pressure and recognizing the limited benefit of fully arming Iran, slow walks the deployment, essentially selling Tehran components that never achieve operational status. For this scenario to materialize, several conditions must hold. European allies, particularly France and Germany, must agree to impose costly sanctions on Russian entities despite their existing economic hardships from previous sanction rounds. Russia must calculate that preserving some economic relationships with Europe matters more than completing the S-600 deployment to Iran. Iran must lack sufficient technical sophistication to reverse engineer or complete system integration independently. The United States must resist domestic political pressure for immediate military action, instead pursuing patient diplomatic pressure campaign. This scenario represents the optimistic pathway where crisis resolves without military confrontation, but requires diplomatic coordination and strategic patience that have proven elusive in recent Middle Eastern crises. Scenario 2 is controlled military escalation through preemptive strikes. Probability 45%. In this pathway, Israel, potentially coordinating with or at least informing the United States, conducts precision strikes against the S-600 components before they disperse and integrate into Iran's air defense network. The strikes likely employ standoff weapons, cruise missiles, and air-launched precision munitions, rather than risking aircraft penetration of Tehran's existing air defenses. Israel has conducted similar preemptive operations before, most notably the 1981 Osirak reactor strike in Iraq and the 2007 Al-Kibar reactor strike in Syria. The strategic logic is straightforward. Destroy the threat before it becomes operational, rather than facing it during future conflict. Iran responds with symbolic retaliation, likely missile strikes against Israeli territory using existing ballistic missile inventory or activation of proxy forces like Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. However, neither side seeks full-scale war. Israel demonstrates willingness to act preemptively while accepting limited retaliation costs. Iran demonstrates resistance without triggering catastrophic escalation it cannot win. Both sides signal clear escalation limits through back-channel communications, likely mediated through Russia, Oman, or Qatar. Within 72 hours, both nations step back from the brink, but the S-600 deployment is disrupted and Iran's advanced air defense modernization suffers years of delay. For this scenario to succeed, several critical conditions must hold. Israel must strike before components disperse from Mehrabad Air Base to hardened facilities across Iran. Intelligence agencies must provide high-confidence targeting data, confirming S-600 location. Iran must demonstrate restraint in retaliation, avoiding mass casualty attacks on Israeli population centers that would make Israeli counter-escalation politically inevitable. The United States must support Israel diplomatically while restraining broader military involvement. Russia must accept the strikes without direct military response, instead limiting support to diplomatic condemnation. This scenario represents the most likely trajectory because it allows both sides to pursue core interests, Israel preventing strategic capability shift, Iran demonstrating resistance without committing to open-ended military conflict neither side can afford. Scenario 3 is catastrophic regional escalation. Probability 25%. In this nightmare pathway, either through miscalculation, accident, or deliberate choice, the S-600 deployment triggers cascading military confrontation, spiraling beyond initial control. The escalation chain could begin multiple ways. Israeli strikes against the S-600 components caused significant Iranian civilian casualties, perhaps because components were stored near populated areas or strikes occurred during shift changes, killing Russian technical advisors alongside Iranian personnel. Iranian hardliners seized the moment to launch massive retaliation, including ballistic missile strikes against Israeli cities, activation of Hezbollah's 150,000 rocket arsenal in southern Lebanon, and attacks on American forces in Iraq and Syria. Israel responds with sustained air campaign against Iranian nuclear facilities, missile production centers, and Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps command infrastructure. The United States, facing attacks on its forces and allied requests for assistance, commits air and naval power to strikes across Iran. Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz using anti-ship missiles and naval mines, triggering global oil price spike above $120 per barrel. Regional actors choose sides. Saudi Arabia and UAE support American-Israeli coalition while Syria and Iraqi Shia militias support Iran. Within 1 week, the Middle East descends into the largest regional war since 1973, with daily airstrikes, ballistic missile exchanges, naval confrontations in the Persian Gulf, and ground combat across multiple fronts. Russian and Chinese diplomatic support for Iran creates superpower crisis overtones reminiscent of Cold War brinkmanship. For this catastrophic scenario to materialize, multiple failures must occur simultaneously. Political leaders must ignore off-ramp opportunities in favor of escalation. Military operations must cause unintended casualties, triggering emotional rather than calculated responses. Back-channel communications must fail to establish clear escalation limits. Regional actors must choose confrontation over neutrality. This scenario remains least likely because it serves no actor's interests. Israel cannot occupy Iran, Iran cannot defeat Israel militarily, America cannot afford another Middle Eastern quagmire, Russia cannot risk direct confrontation with NATO. However, history demonstrates that wars often begin through miscalculation and spiral beyond original intentions. Watch for 5 critical indicators in the next 48 to 72 hours that will reveal which scenario is materializing. First, satellite imagery of Mehrabad Air Base. If commercial satellite companies detect the S-600 components dispersing from the airbase to multiple hardened facilities across Iran, preemptive strike window closes rapidly and diplomatic scenario becomes more likely. If components remain concentrated at the arrival location, Israeli strike option remains viable. Second, Russian technical advisor movements. If Russia begins evacuating civilian technical personnel from Iranian military facilities, Moscow possesses intelligence suggesting imminent strikes and is protecting its nationals. If Russian advisors remain in place or additional specialists arrive, Moscow calculates strike risk remains low. Third, Israeli military posture changes. Monitor for reserve call-ups, particularly among Israeli Air Force personnel and air defense units. Increased Israeli combat air patrols along the Lebanese border suggest preparation for Hezbollah retaliation following strikes. These movements will appear in open-source reporting within hours. Fourth, American carrier positioning. The USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group is currently operating in the eastern Mediterranean. If the carrier moves toward the Suez Canal or enters the Red Sea, American forces are positioning for potential Middle Eastern contingency operations. Fifth, oil market reactions. If Brent crude prices spike above $95 per barrel and maintain that level, markets are pricing in significant probability of Persian Gulf disruption, indicating sophisticated investors believe conflict exceeds 50% probability based on intelligence unavailable to general public. The 4 cargo planes landed 36 hours ago. The components are in Iran. NATO is meeting right now trying to formulate coordinated response. Israel's security cabinet has convened twice in the last 24 hours. This is not abstract geopolitical maneuvering. This is immediate crisis with profound implications for American military capability, Israeli security, and regional stability. I'm tracking every development minute by minute. I have satellite imagery providers queued, defense intelligence sources monitoring, flight tracking systems watching military movements across 3 continents. When Israel decides whether to strike, when Iran begins dispersing those components, When NATO announces its response, when carriers move or missiles fly, you will understand the implications here first with the depth of analysis you cannot find in mainstream coverage that trades comprehension for speed. Subscribe to this channel right now. Turn on all notifications. You need to understand what happens in the next 72 hours because the decisions made this week will determine whether American stealth aircraft can operate over the Middle East for the next decade, and whether Israel possesses credible military options against Iranian nuclear program or must accept deterrence through denial. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Israel will strike before the S-600 becomes operational? Do you think Russia will provide full technical support or withhold critical components? Do you think this represents Putin testing Biden's resolve or genuine strategic partnership with Tehran? I read every comment and your analysis matters. The components landed Tuesday morning. NATO is meeting right now. The clock is running. The next 72 hours determine whether we're heading toward diplomatic containment, controlled escalation, or regional war. Thanks for watching.